streaming time, and we don't want to keep them waiting. Their listening audience is always tuned in right away to be able to get the latest information. I'd like to thank our media partners for again being able to join us on this press conference and for being so gracious to make their social media platforms available. I would also like to recognize the presence of our speaker, Therese Terlahi, who has joined us this evening, your afternoon. Again, good afternoon, Madam Speaker. We're going to be going over today the announcement by the Treasury on the amounts made available through the American Rescue Plan that the government of Guam is going to be able to begin applying for and tapping into that we've all been awaiting. We're going to go over some detail on what the funds can be used for. And more specifically, Madam Speaker, I do have here as well the transmittal from Legislatura that basically outlines all the different priorities that they would like to see addressed. And I will go through your priority list, Madam Speaker, to be able to identify specifically how these items can be funded with respect to what has been outlined by the Treasury in their communique as of today, May 10th, 2021. Let me begin by going directly to what the Treasury has transmitted. I do understand that the Governor's office has also received this. There are some details in here that are very specific to note, and we will be highlighting those as we go through. The Treasury writes, to support the immediate pandemic response, bring back jobs, and lay the groundwork for a strong and equitable recovery, the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021 established the Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Funds designed to deliver $350 billion to state, local, territorial, and tribal governments to bolster their response to the COVID-19 emergency and its economic impacts. Today, Treasury is launching this much needed relief to, one, support urgent COVID-19 response efforts to continue to decrease spread of the virus and bring the pandemic under control. Two, replace lost public sector revenue to strengthen support for vital public services and help retain jobs. Three, support immediate economic stabilization for households and businesses. And four, address systemic public health and economic challenges that have contributed to the unequal impact of the pandemic on certain populations. The Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Funds provide substantial flexibility for each jurisdiction to meet local needs, including support for households, small businesses, impacted industries, essential workers, and the communities hardest hit by the crisis. If we could have everybody please mute so that we can just flow through. These funds also deliver resources that recipients can invest in building, maintaining, or upgrading their water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. Starting today, eligible state, territorial, metropolitan city, county, and tribal governments may request coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds through the Treasury submission portal. The Treasury provided a link to this portal. We will provide this write-up from the Treasury to all of our media partners in the call, as well as access to the links. They can visually see what it is that the local government is going to be working with. Concurrent with this program launch, Treasury has published an interim final rule that implements the provisions of this program. Overall, in the amounts that were provided, specifically for territories, was $4.5 billion, of which a total of $553 million was afforded to Guam, with $103 million based on population and $450 million based on an even balance split among all other territories. For the use of funding, the Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Funds provide eligible state, local, territorial, and tribal governments with an infusion of resources to meet pandemic response needs and build a stronger, more equitable economy as the country recovers. These funds are able to support public health expenditures, address negative economic impacts caused by the public health emergency, replace lost public sector revenue, provide premium pay for essential workers, and invest in water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. And we will go through these items specifically now at this time. For supporting the public health response, this includes services and programs to contain and mitigate the spread of COVID-19. And this includes vaccination programs, medical expenses, testing, contact tracing, isolation or quarantine, PPE purchases, support for vulnerable populations to access medical or public health services, public health surveillance, enforcement of public health orders, public communication efforts, enhancement of healthcare capacity, including alternative care facilities, support for prevention, mitigation, or other services in congregate living facilities and schools, enhancement of public health data systems, capital investment in public facilities to meet pandemic operational needs, ventilation improvements in key settings like healthcare facilities. I label that as item 1A. Item 1B is services to address behavioral healthcare needs exacerbated by the pandemic. This is basically the services provided by mental health. It also addresses substance abuse, other behavioral health issues, crisis intervention, service or outreach to promote access to health and social services. Also included is payroll and covered benefits expenses for public health, healthcare, human services, public safety, and similar employees to the extent that they work on the COVID-19 response. For public health and safety workers, recipients can use these funds to cover the full payroll and cover benefits costs for employees or operating units or divisions primarily dedicated to the COVID-19 response. Item 2, funds can be used for addressing the negative economic impacts caused by the public health emergency. This is critical, and this is where a lot of the flexibility exists. Funds can be used for delivering assistance to workers and families, including aid to unemployed workers and job training, as well as aid to households facing food, housing, or other financial insecurity. In addition, these funds can support survivor benefits for family members of COVID-19 victims. 2B, supporting small businesses, helping them to address financial challenges caused by the pandemic and to make investments in COVID-19 prevention and mitigation tactics, as well as to provide technical assistance. To achieve these goals, recipients may employ this funding to execute a broad array of loan, grant, in-kind assistance, and counseling programs to enable small businesses to rebound from the downturn. Item 2C, speeding the recovery of tourism, travel, and hospitality sectors, supporting industries that were particularly hard hit by the COVID-19 emergency and are just now beginning to mend. Similarly, impacted sectors within a local area are also eligible for support. And item 2D, rebuilding public sector capacity by rehiring public sector staff and replenishing unemployment insurance trust funds, in each case up to pre-pandemic levels. Recipients may also use this funding to build their internal capacity to successfully implement economic relief programs with investment in data analysis, target outreach, technology infrastructure, and impact evaluations. Item 3, these funds may be used for serving the hardest hit communities and families. 3A, addressing health disparities and the social determinants of health through funding for community health workers, public benefits navigators, remediation of hazards, and community violence intervention programs. Item 3B, investments in housing and neighborhoods, such as services to address individuals experiencing homelessness, affordable housing development, housing vouchers and residential counseling, and housing navigation assistance to facilitate moves to neighborhoods with high economic opportunity. Item 3C, addressing educational disparities through new or expanded early learning services, providing additional resources to high poverty school districts, and offering educational services like tutoring or after-school programs, as well as services to address social, emotional, and mental health needs. And item 3D, promoting healthy childhood environments, including new or expanded high-quality childcare, home visiting programs for families with young children, and enhanced services for child welfare involved families and foster youth. Governments may use coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds to support these additional services if they are provided. Within a qualified census tract, to provide living in qualified census tracts, or to other populations, households, or geographic areas disproportionately impacted by the pandemic. Item 4, replacing lost public sector revenue. State, local, territorial, and tribal governments that are facing budget shortfalls may use coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds to avoid cuts to government services. With these additional resources, recipients can continue to provide valuable public services and ensure that fiscal austerity measures do not hamper the broader economic recovery. Recipients may use these funds to replace lost revenue. Treasury's interim final rule establishes a methodology that each recipient can use to calculate its reduction in revenue. Specifically, the recipients will compute the extent of their reduction in revenue by comparing their actual revenue to alternative representing what could have been expected to occur in the absence of the pandemic. Analysis of this expected trend begins with the last full fiscal year prior to the public health emergency and projects forward at either A, the recipient's average annual revenue growth over the 3 full fiscal years prior to the emergency, or B, 4.1% of the national average state and local revenue growth from 2015 to 2018. Item 5, and this is a big one that I don't think was ever addressed and is something that has been on a lot of our people's minds, is providing premium pay for essential workers. Coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds provide resources for eligible state, local, territorial, and tribal governments to recognize the heroic contributions of essential workers. Since the start of the public health emergency, essential workers have put their physical well-being at risk to meet the daily needs of their communities and to provide care for others. Many of these essential workers have not received compensation for the heightened risks they have faced and continue to face. Recipients may use this funding to provide premium pay directly or through grants to private employers to a broad range of essential workers who must be physically present at their jobs, including, among others, staff at nursing homes, hospitals, and home care settings, workers at farms, food production facilities, grocery stores and restaurants, janitors and sanitation workers, public health and safety staff, truck drivers, transit staff, and warehouse workers, childcare workers, educators and school staff, social service and human services staff. Treasury's interim final rule emphasizes the need for recipients to prioritize premium pay for lower income workers. I'll repeat that. It emphasizes the need for recipients to prioritize premium pay for lower income workers. Premium pay that would increase a worker's total pay above 150% of the greater of the state or county average annual wage requires specific justification for how it responds to the needs of these workers. I also want to again reemphasize that that list that I mentioned is including among others. And so this is not a final list. This is a general guideline that I believe can be further expanded if the government puts to Treasury a case for a particular group of essential workers that it wants to compensate through the use of these funds, and Treasury will assess it and respond. In addition, employers are both permitted and encouraged to use coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds to offer retrospective premium pay, recognizing that many essential workers have not yet received additional compensation for work performed. Staff working for third-party contractors in eligible sectors are also eligible for premium pay. Again, that last section that I read there means that if we so choose to use these funds for back pay for essential workers, it can be used for back pay for essential workers. Item 6 is investing in water and sewer infrastructure, and item 7 is investing in broadband infrastructure. I want to move on to item 8, ineligible uses, and it is very specific. States and territories may not use this funding to directly or indirectly offset a reduction in net tax revenue due to a change in law from March 3rd, 2021 through the last day of the fiscal year in which the funds provided have been spent. If a state or territory cuts taxes, they must demonstrate how they paid for the tax cuts from sources other than coronavirus state fiscal recovery funds, by enacting policies to raise other sources of revenue, by cutting spending, or through higher revenue due to economic growth. If the funds provided have been used to offset tax cuts, the amount used for this purpose must be paid back to the Treasury. That's an important point because I know there's been a lot of debate about using these funds to offset potentially a reduction in the business privilege tax, the gross receipts tax. We cannot use these funds to do that. However, it should be noted that the reimbursement of earned income tax credits is not governed by this provision. And if the local government wishes to offset business privilege tax or gross receipts taxes with the influx of earned income tax credit reimbursements that we secured earlier several months ago, that is an option that can be considered and is not bound by this section because this is specifically related to the American Rescue Plan funds that are being provided in this program. Another item for ineligible use is for making a deposit to a pension fund. So we are not able to use these funds to offset the outstanding liabilities of the government of Guam retirement fund. I wanted to now take an opportunity after having gone through that to directly inform our speaker and legislatura and our people exactly how these guidelines can apply to the priorities that were outlined by legislatura a few days ago. A priority one by legislatura is direct assistance to individuals and families through the implementation of the RISE program, Public Law 136, the RISE Act. Based on our cursory analysis, and again, this is just coming from our office, but these all would need to be revalidated with Treasury. We believe that that can be funded based on item 2A, which is delivering assistance to workers and families, and item 5, which is providing premium pay for essential workers. On Small Business Pandemic Assistance Program and Economic Development Authority programs, the next priority of legislatura, we believe that these may be funded by item 2B, supporting small businesses in the guidelines. On the third priority of legislatura, Ajuda y Mangafa, Help for Families program, we also believe that this can be funded by item 2A under the guidelines, delivering assistance to workers and families. Under the priorities to expand healthcare services for the Department of Health and Public and Social Services priority, we believe that this can be funded under the guidelines of item 1, which listed a number of priorities under the COVID-19 prevention, as well as the mental health issues, as well as item 4, which outlined replacing lost public sector revenue. For the Guam Memorial Hospital Authority, this one needs to be looked at very closely. And again, for the new hospital set aside, that would need to be revetted through Treasury. We believe that a case can be made that item 1A, which is, again, the services and programs to contain and mitigate the spread of COVID-19, could be used to make a case for providing the 22 million to GMH for the existing hospital, and maybe for the 200 million for the new hospital as outlined by legislatura. For the Guam Behavioral Health and Wellness Center under the legislature priorities, we believe that those could potentially be funded by item 1B, which is also the mental health provisions, as well as item 4, which is the replacing lost public sector provisions. For DISIT, the Department of Integrated Services for Individuals with Disabilities, again, this could be funded likely through item 4, the funding for replacing lost public sector revenue. Under infrastructure and technology upgrades, we have a priority for the Guam Waterworks Authority to funding to avert immediate rate increases for ratepayers and repair existing pipelines, connect sewer lines to outlying areas, etc. We believe that this could likely be funded with item 6, investing in water and sewer infrastructure. For the Department of Public Works to repair the roads, this one will be a little tricky, but I believe a case can be made that this can be funded under item 2C, speeding the recovery of the tourism, travel, and hospitality sectors. a case can likely be made that these road repairs are necessary for us to enhance the destination and make our island more attractive for visitors. Under the next priority, the Guam Visitors Bureau, we also believe this can be funded under item 2C. Again, speeding the recovery of the tourism, travel, and hospitality sectors, as well as item 4, which is replacing lost public sector revenue. For the funding for the Guam Customs and Quarantine Agency, also item 2C and item 4. For the Guam Regional Transit Authority, also item 2C, speeding the recovery of tourism. For the Mayor's Council to purchase equipment to conduct full-scale village beautification programs, we believe that a case can be made for this to be funded under item 2C, speeding the recovery of tourism. For the Department of Land Management to improve the public's access to public land information, we believe that a case can be made for this to be funded under item 2D, rebuilding public sector capacity, particularly the area that focuses on economic relief programs and investments in data analysis, targeted outreach, technology infrastructure, and impact evaluations. Under the Chamorro Land Trust Commission, funding to support the building of affordable homes for families, we believe that this can be funded under item 6, investing in water and sewer infrastructure, as well as under item 2A, delivering assistance to workers and families, and item 2D, rebuilding public sector capacity. For the Guam Ancestral Lands Commission, we believe that there's a potential for this to be funded under item 3B, also for the Chamorro Land Trust Commission, item 3B, investments in housing and neighborhoods. Bear with me, I'm navigating 2 different documents here. For the Guam Solid Waste Authority, we believe that this can be funded under item 2D, which specifically funds rebuilding public sector capacity by rehiring public sector staff, as it's cited that this funding is needed for the continuation of the operation with the loss of employees. For the Department of Parks and Recreation funding, we believe that item 2C, again, speeding the recovery of tourism, could be justification. For the Department of Administration, also item 2D, which would be the rebuilding public sector capacity, as this is going to be a technology upgrade for the Department of Administration. For the Guam Police Department, the Guam Fire Department, the Department of Corrections, those will need to be very carefully looked at because it was difficult to find a direct correlation between the guidance and the intent of the funding. But there is a possibility that these can be funded under item 4, replacing lost public sector revenue, and item 2C, speeding the recovery of tourism. We can make an argument that we need to increase and replace equipment in GPD for tourist safety, that we need to improve the fire department's equipment also for tourist safety, and that the Department of Corrections issues can be addressed specifically by item 4, replacing lost public sector revenue. On the Department of Youth Affairs, we believe that item 3D is applicable, promoting healthy childhood environments. For Judiciary of Guam, we believe item 2D, rebuilding public sector capacity, is applicable, as this specifically cites a technology upgrade for the Judiciary of Guam. Similar to the Department of Youth Affairs, the Office of the Attorney General, trying to find resources for the Child Support Division, we believe that a case could be made that falls under item 3D, promoting healthy childhood environments. For the Office of Technology, that is very clearly under item 2D, the technological infrastructure investments. Similar for the Department of Revenue and Taxation, for them to automate their services and make technology upgrades, that also falls under item 2D. For the Department of Agriculture, I had a very difficult time trying to firm up an alignment on that. So that would need to be looked at more closely by the administration and the legislature. We will assist in whatever way possible to help try and find a way to interpret that within the guidelines. For the Guam the Guam Environmental Protection Agency, We believe that falls under item 2D for the impact evaluations. The GO bond refinancing, unfortunately, I just do not see how that would be able to fit within the guidelines, as well as the ORA dump closure. That is difficult to determine. We may be able to try and fit that into water and sewer infrastructure, but that was a tough fit. So those are two other difficult items on the list of legislatura. For the Guam Veterans Affairs Office, for the cemetery funding and the Korean monument, I really believe that if we structure the request properly, we can make a case that that's for tourism, speedy tourism recovery, as it can be argued that the condition of our cemetery and of course the Korean monument are directly correlated to the image that we project to our visitor industry. For the legislature's priorities, continuing on that for workforce training, diversification, and direct student aid. For the Department of Labor, we believe item 2D would also apply, which is again rebuilding public sector capacity. For the Guam Community College, the University of Guam, and the Guam Academy Charter Schools, we believe item 3C is applicable. And that is addressing educational disparities through new or expanded early learning activities, providing additional resources to high poverty school districts, and offering educational services like tutoring or after school programs, as well as services to address social, emotional, and mental health needs. We are across the board a high poverty school district. And so these funding priorities could very likely apply to item 3C. On streamlining and upgrading government services, again, we had some challenges in this area. We believe that the Civil Service Commission, the Department of Chamorro Affairs, the Chamorro Language Commission, and the Council on Arts and Humanities may all potentially qualify under item 4, replacing lost government revenue. Specifically for Chamorro Affairs, we believe that 2C again applies, speeding the recovery of tourism, travel, and hospitality sectors. For the Chamorro Language Commission, a case can be made that item 2C also applies, as it's funded from the Tourist Attraction Fund. And we can clearly make a case that the speaking of our language is a tourist attraction. For the Council on the Arts and Humanities, again, that's funded from the Tourist Attraction Fund, so it should fit into item 2C. And that also is an area that is likely to be easy to apply to an argument that it is tourism related. For the Guam Educational Telecommunications Corporation, we believe item 2D applies, as that is a technology infrastructure. For the Guam Ethics Commission funding, I had a very difficult time finding a way to apply the existing program fundings under the American Rescue Plan to fund specifically what the Guam Ethics Commission funding request is here in legislatura. So I think the legislature and the administration may need to go back to the drawing board. For the Guam Public Library System, a case can be made that that's also a technology upgrade. And that completes the listing of the items from the legislature. As you can see, we went through all of them. I was able to identify a way to fund nearly all of them. And so, Madam Speaker, I believe that there is a very high likelihood that the priorities that you've outlined to Imagahaga by legislatura could actually be done and applied for based on what is outlined here in the statements from the Treasury that was issued today. I'll go ahead and pause here and yield to our speaker. Madam Speaker, if you had any comment or question regarding the information that we've shared so far today.
All right. Thank you, Congressman. It won't let me start my video, but I do want to say I very much appreciate you having gone through the details of the list and matching them up with the guidelines. That is tremendous collaboration. And we talked earlier about collaborating in this regard. We all on Guam want to make sure that the money is spent for the most benefit for the people of Guam. And so I'm so grateful for this this real, detailed work, and that I'm pretty happy that we're going to be able to spend a lot of this money in those areas that we've outlined, because we do believe these are priorities, and we will work closely with you. And again, thanks for the help to align these now that we have the guidelines out and the very specifics. So so far so good. I'm very grateful. Thank you for the collaboration. And again, I promise to further collaborate, and I hope that that's what we're all going to do here. I think that's the only way forward.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you also for making sure that our office was provided with this listing. We will do a formal write-up to show you the alignment and transmit that to you as soon as we get that completed. I did want to further highlight that the Treasury guidelines were very specific about essential workers. Perhaps Elisa Tura can go back and reevaluate some of these items with that in mind. I know our essential workers, they've been, I mean, they kept us going, you know, and because we now have.
I very much agree with you. And we had seen, you know, the compensation for essential workers on the initial, you know, ARP, but we weren't sure how to interpret that. So we kind of wanted to make sure we gave money to businesses so that if we could interpret through them, or, you know, push that money through the businesses themselves, or but now that, yeah, we have details, then absolutely. And they even lay out the specifics of which employees. So that's very helpful. And now we will be able to more further clarify that. So
thank you, Madam
yes,
Speaker.
I agree. Essential workers, we were trying to find a way, weren't sure, but now we can be more sure. So I'm grateful.
Very happy to hear. Thank you, Madam Speaker. If you don't mind, I'll go ahead and have you remain, and we'll turn it over to our media partners for anyone who has any questions for myself or the speaker.
Yes, Congressman, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Is this, go ahead and identify yourself and go ahead and proceed with your question.
Yes, sir. This is Jerry Partido from PNC.
Hi, Jerry.
Congressman, forgive my ignorance. All along, I thought that the American Rescue Plan funding would be given in bulk to Guam. At least it's allotment, right? And then the government would have the, you know, the power or the choice to allocate the funding wherever it might want. So now it seems that they have to justify all expenses for. Is that true? That they have to just, I mean, for every drawdown, that the federal government also has a say on how the funding will be used?
They've issued guidelines, and just to clarify, Jerry, this is not unique to Guam. This is for every recipient of these funds. And the law was the law did outline categories on how the funding was to be used. And Treasury has further elaborated on how those categories are to be applied. And so that's why they've issued this guidance, and it's not inconsistent with any other federal allotment during this pandemic. Everything that's been allotted has also come with guidelines. And so these are the Treasury's guidelines on the state and local funds. But again, it's very flexible. As you can see, I was able to go through the legislature's entire list and find a way to apply nearly every single item. And so this is consistent across the country. But yes, the local government does have access to these funds, but it needs to go in and through the Treasury portal, notify the Treasury of what amount it needs and for what purpose, and then Treasury will release the funds, which is actually something that I'm very comfortable with.
Okay, one last question for this round.
Sure.
Is it going to be one big lump sum transfer, or is it going to be a variety of drawdowns?
It all depends on how the governor, the executive branch goes in and makes its requests. If it does, for example, a lump sum request for education and itemizes it, then the Treasury would have the discretion to that lump sum for education with the caveat that is to meet those itemized commitments. So if there's a commitment for DOE, UOG, GCC, charter schools, private schools, and it's lumped as an education request, I don't see how that would be necessarily rejected as a lump sum, but of course the itemized commitments would be obligated.
Okay, thank you, Congressman.
You're welcome, Jerry.
Hi, Congressman. It's Nestor at KUAM.
Hi, Nestor.
So the territories will be getting 4.5 billion out of the 350 billion total, or a little over 1%. Not to look a gift horse in the mouth, but do you think that's fair or proportional to our value to the country?
Actually, Nestor, if we were to, on a per capita basis, evaluate all of the money that we've received, we actually received a lot more than most states. And I'm very guarded about, making that, we don't want to go around bragging about that because we want to make sure that we're continuing to get as much federal support as possible. But all inclusive of all of the money that we've been receiving throughout these multiple relief efforts, we've actually exceeded many states on a per capita basis. So on this particular itemized list, you could say that it's a lot lower than other areas, but on a net basis, we came out way ahead.
Okay, thank you for that. And so you talked a little bit about the funding objectives, which are very broad in my view. But do you have any spending priorities? You mentioned a lot about, elaborated a lot about the premium pay. Do you think that should be a high priority?
Our essential workers, they've been going in and they've been clocking in and putting in the hours when a lot of our public sector workers were not. They've been putting themselves in harm's way in very unique circumstances. Even before, remember, we're kind of in a comfort zone of all these vaccines, but they were doing this before we even knew when a vaccine would be coming out. And so the Treasury, I think, very aptly referenced the work that they did as heroic. And I think that is something that absolutely needs to be supported. And I believe that getting some resources to our essential workers for them just keeping us going. Even just us being where we are today, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the essential workers doing what they did. And so that is absolutely something that I believe needs to be recognized and prioritized. As for my personal preferences on prioritizing funding, I really believe that looking at ways for us to close out legacy issues in a fashion that would conform, such as the Chamorro Land Trust, and tying that in together with the housing and infrastructure provisions that are in this guidelines. That's an opportunity for us to finally close out something since 1995. The speaker and I have been talking about this for months about whether or not this is going to be possible. So doing those kind of things, we can definitely push out money for priorities and argue about what those priorities should be, but we all must acknowledge that the commitments this government has made are commitments we need to follow through with, and those should be the top priorities, second only to, of course, I believe, the public health and the reopening funding needs. But let's close the books. Let's close the books on these things. Those are commitments that were made before any of us were even in office, and all of our people are waiting. And those are the things that we absolutely need to put front and center.
Thank you. I'll defer to the next round.
Congressman, we have Joe
Let me
Titano.
ask if the speaker wanted to be afforded an opportunity to chime in on that subject, Madam Speaker.
Well, I do want to say that, I think in my conversations with our Office of Finance Budget, my colleagues and oversight chair and oversight chairs, and in the minority senators, we're all in agreement as to those types of priorities. And we had discussed, of course, premium pay that had been mentioned but not clarified. So I have no doubt that they would also be willing to go and put in the details regarding premium pay and how that will actually reach them, if not through the small business programs that we have allocated for already. But absolutely, I agree. And we have been discussing this, that we have an opportunity here that, you know, our future generations might not have, or for a long, long time, and that past generations did not have. And so we do not want to mess this up. We want to make sure that we do what Guam has been wanting to do for many years, and that we really owe to the people of Guam. And so that's our goal here. And I'm hoping, I'm just very glad for the collaboration to be able to get that done. And so, thank you.
Congressman, Madam Speaker, we have Joe Titano with PDN.
Hafide, Congressman. You know, the number that we got out today from the Treasury was 554 million, and I believe the governor's office has said that with some of the other elements like county and non-entitlements, it's going to go up to about 604. I know you said we shouldn't look a gift horse in the mouth, but the number that we got before was around 660 million. And, you know, that money can make a lot of difference for a lot of people. Are we likely to cover the spread and get up as high as that amount?
We're looking forward to it. There are three different funding streams that we're talking about here. This first 553 million, that's the one that's based on population and based on a fixed sum that was split among all the territories. There is another one for, as you mentioned earlier, the lower income areas that we're also going to be qualifying for. And then there's another 10 billion in a capital projects fund that the Treasury has yet to determine how that's going to be allocated and what the guidelines are going to be on those. I think we're going to get close to 661 million. Those figures that we provided were the initial committee determinations. But everything ultimately gets refined when it passes into law and the agencies have to look at the defining statutes and crunch the numbers. And so the numbers that we're working with are the census numbers, so that it's equal basis across the board. But we are waiting to see what the final number is on the capital projects fund. But between the 553 million and then the other funding source that you mentioned, it looks like it's going to be just over $600 million. And then the capital projects fund, we'll see where that takes us to, closer to the 661 million that we were originally anticipating.
All right, thank you. And just one other question. You know, I know your office had issued a letter to Senator San Augustine regarding asking him not to reduce appropriations to the DOE. And now that we got a clarification that, you know, these funds can be used, maybe Madam Speaker, you could answer this question better. Now that we have clarification that it can be used to offset like revenue shortfalls, are reducing appropriations to certain agencies something that we are going to have to do to offset the shortfalls this year?
Well, we are facing shortfalls for sure for FY21. And so we are anticipating that, you know, we will have to make an adjustment to the FY22 request as well, to accommodate the actual revenues. So as to particular agencies, not sure, but of course, you know, we all want to do what is necessary to take full advantage of the federal funds that will be available to the Department of Education and to all our other departments as well. And so we will be very closely looking at how to ensure that. And so I think, of course, with the money that the Department of Education is getting from the federal government directly for its projects, that we are, you know, we also want to make sure that this is their opportunity to take care of some of the infrastructure at these schools that the teachers have been asking for and parents have been asking for. So we are very much looking forward to see that. And we do need, you know, to have a very good dialogue with DOE on how they will be using that money, and so that we can, you know, make up for shortfalls in any other way that's possible.
All right, thank you. I'll defer to the next round.
Madam Speaker, I don't have anyone else in queue, so if there are any other questions in the second round, please advise.
I have one more question. This is Jerry from PNC.
Go ahead, Jerry.
This is for Speaker Terlahi. Speaker, can you share with us what transpired during your meeting with the governor on your priorities?
Oh, that meeting is going to take place this afternoon, and we will definitely share with you how it goes. We look, we prepared our list on the legislature side with the information that we had available. So of course we want to meet with the governor. We want to find any other information that may be available that we do not have on our table and work with that, just like we are now going to be able to work with the guidelines from the U.S. Treasury and the details that the congressman has provided us. And I think we're all going to do the same thing. We're all going to work to make sure that our priorities are not just outlined, but written so that we meet the requirements. And that's the hard work. And I think that that's the work we're all willing to do. And again, my colleagues were very willing to do that, and I'm very grateful to them. And because they were willing to, spend a lot of time to make sure that our priorities were as closely in line with the, American Rescue Plan as much as possible. So now I'm actually looking forward to getting back to the drawing board and doing even more work now that we have more details. So it's exciting. It's an exciting time. So thank you.
And one last question for the congressman. Congressman, during the last press conference, you sort of issued a warning saying that these federal funds, this windfall, should be used wisely because this may be the last time that we're going to be getting any assistance. Well, as a congressman, as a former senator, what would you recommend to be the priorities for the spending of this federal funds?
I think that a lot of the items that were listed by the legislature have merit. They are good investments, particularly the technology investments in our agencies that manage our finances. That has always been a long-standing problem that has hampered our ability to really have transparent information for us to be able to make informed decisions. So that's very, very important. The funding that they've outlined for education, I think, is absolutely on point. We need to make sure that our education institutions not only are prioritized of these federal dollars, but that have as much of their local dollars retained, because we have a lot of catching up to do in our schools. I mean, I think we've already gone a whole generation, if not more, maybe 2 generations of no textbooks. I remember when I was in middle school, we had some, and that was a long time ago. So definitely the education funding is a priority. How we can try and reconfigure local funds to address other things that we've been talking about for a long time. I remember, Madam Speaker, when we opened the new Guam Congress building, we were still talking about funding Simon Sanchez. So those kind of things. We have GW that's just in desperate need of an entirely new facility, as well as along with some of our other middle schools and even our schools down south. So those are absolutely high need areas. Again, closing out the Chamorro Land Trust is something that I believe we must do. I mean, there's just no excuse at this point with these resources and the applicability of these resources for how addressing housing and infrastructure needs. We absolutely should pour those resources into that and get thousands and tens of thousands of our families who've been waiting since 1995, finally the closure that they long deserve. And then, of course, the economic development initiatives and the sustainability initiatives are all things that we need to focus on. I know Gita has a very exhaustive list of economic development opportunities. Those should be absolutely invested in, as well as the funding of essential workers who, as I mentioned earlier, are the reasons why we're all still here today. And so that's a blend of some of the things I think we need to prioritize, some of the things the legislature has outlined on their list. And as the speaker said, this is a time for collaboration. I was very happy to be able to do the initial work of kind of pairing up where these federal resources are able to go with where the legislature is looking at putting them. And I will be discussing very candidly with our speaker and our governor ways that we can try and focus these resources on areas that are going to have the most long-term return on investment for our people. But thank you for the question, Jerry. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Congressman.
Congressman, Madam Speaker, next we have Nestor.
Yes, thank you. Congressman, I asked you this last time, I'll ask you again. Do you think this will be, the American Rescue Plan will be the last of the federal pandemic assistance?
The more the data comes in, the more I'm absolutely convinced. I mean, even out here in the States now, there's concerns about inflationary pressures really building because of supply bottlenecks in lumber, in oranges. I mean, across the board, there's just all these supply bottlenecks that are causing prices to rise. And the inflationary concerns are also attributed to the large amounts of federal dollars that are now circulating in the US economy, creating greater demand while we have these supply constraints. And so as things continue to heat up on the inflationary side out here in the States, and as we see recovery really starting to take root nationally, I will again make it very plain that I do not see another round of relief coming. I really believe that the PUA expiry in September will be firm. We do have the child tax credit funds that will be rolling out as early as July. It could be $300 per child per month, all the way up into the end of the year, and then an additional child tax credit rebate on top of that. But aside from the child tax credit, which was already passed, this is not new law, this was already passed, I do not see any additional resources flowing through. I do not see any extension of unemployment. I do not see any stimulus. I think that we are dealing with our final hand on the table, and we need to do everything we can to maximize its outcome, make sure that we bridge the gap between when relief runs out and when our tourism sectors finally turn back on, and invest these resources in our people so that they are not only better equipped for us to recover, but are also given the tools they need to be able to be the resources on the ground, the employment resources for us to attract new industries. You know, these are the times for us to not only make sure that we're taking care of the pandemic needs, but also make sure that we're taking all of these resources and really solving the problems that we've had for a very long time on our island, and also turning all the talk that we've been making for so many years about diversifying, turning that talk into action. This is the time, these are the resources, and we have no excuse. And so, yeah, Nestor, this is it, you know, and now the ball is in our court. We as a local government, we as local leaders need to showcase to our people that when given the opportunity and the means, we can deliver the expectations that they have for us.
Thank you. One last question, Congressman. When do you plan to deliver the State of the Congress, and what will be your focus?
I know I told you it was going to be in May, but you know, my family's coming back in June. And I really want my family to be there when I do it. I want my children to really be able to experience it. And so I spoke to the speaker. We'll likely be doing this the later part of June. My emphasis will be on, of course, what we've accomplished, what we are dealing with right now, what our people have gone through, and what they can look forward to. And basically how we all need to come together and you know, deliver on these things that we have long-standing in our community, and of course outline what the future congressional agenda is going to be now that we've achieved a number of the items that have been long-standing. But yeah, I really want my family to be there. I'm bringing my wife and my children home. I think the 21st of June. And so between the 21st of June and maybe in that week or the corresponding week, we will be doing our congressional address.
All right. Thank you, Congressman.
Thank you, Nestor.
Congressman, Madam Speaker, we have Mr. Joe Titano. Thank you.
Congressman, I know you touched briefly about the hospital and how that might be a little difficult. You know, the governor is committed, wants to commit about half of the funds. How likely are we to see that materialize, funds towards the new GMH?
That's a very good question. And ultimately, the administration is going to have to make its case to the Treasury. I don't think it's too hard of a case to make. I mean, the circumstances of our hospital are not a hard sell. You know, those are realities on the ground. We have Army Corps of Engineer dollars and analysis to back it up. The real question is, you know, do we need to tie that in specifically to the pandemic? Are we going to be able to? I think that it can be done. But again, the other side of the equation is, you know, do we have the resources in this funding round to be able to see the project through, or are we going to be setting aside funds that are ultimately going to be insufficient and then kind of foregoing the opportunity to use those funds in areas that they would have been sufficient for? If I was to make a suggestion, I would say that if Treasury does say that it is something that we can begin paying for, we absolutely should upfront pay for an architectural and engineering plan and design to actually have it shovel ready. But something like that, I mean, you know, as much as we want to say we're going to put money aside and pay for a new hospital, all of these things they have protracted timelines. An architectural and engineering specification could take a year or longer for a project of that scope. It also depends on where we're going to locate the hospital. And so identifying the land is, of course, a first step that needs to be taken, because that's when the architectural and engineering will go in and assess the land for what its specifics are, what the specific needs are going to be in order to build it out and make it structurally sound. So there's a lot of steps that need to be taken for us to get this new hospital built. I believe that if we're able to use these resources for it, we should commit the resources on a rolling basis. So we're paying for the immediate needs of moving the project forward. But we must also be mindful of the opportunity cost of parking a whole chunk of money and letting it sit there when we have a whole laundry list of high priority areas, a recovery that needs to get funded, essential workers that need to be made whole, and you know, a whole lot of other priorities that are out there. So yes, let's absolutely put money aside and fund a new hospital, but let's be mindful of how we roll funds out to match the timelines of such a project, so that we're not making our people lose out on being able to deploy resources more expeditiously.
Right. And one last question. Any updates on trying to get some of that funding for transit or the fisheries?
Everything has been properly submitted to the respective committees. The transit funding will be part of the American Jobs Plan. That is the President's Infrastructure Initiative. And the co-op is part of the Congress's move to fund specific projects and districts with specific funding identified for each district. We've turned everything in. The work now is with the committees to be able to build out their packages and then navigate it to the floor. As soon as we have any progress on that, we'll be letting everybody know.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Congressman, Madam Speaker, we have John O'Connor with the Post.
Congressman, I've been happy. But
John, you're lagging really bad. You might have a you're lagging badly. You might have a bandwidth issue.
Right. Let me send the question on the chat, and
There you go. You're coming through
you can
clear.
answer that way.
You're coming through clear. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay. So can you say if the ARP monies can be used to specifically reduce reductions in revenue, such as reductions in fiscal year 2021 for Gov Guam?
It can be used to offset reductions in revenue that can be formulaically attributed to what could be reasonably projected to have been received, but it cannot be used to offset reductions that are willful. Like, we cannot reduce taxes and then use it to offset the reduction in taxes. But if we can show formulaically that the revenues we have now are lower than what the revenues would have been pre-pandemic, then we can offset those revenue losses.
Yeah, thank you for the clarification, Congressman.
Sure.
At this time, Congressman, Madam Speaker, we have no one else in the queue.
Madam Speaker, I'll go ahead and yield to you for any closing, and then I'll wrap us up after you're done.
Well, again, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to collaborate and to and really for the work. So, and I want to thank my colleagues who Office of Finance and Budget, who started us with the initial list, and then my colleagues at oversight chairs who really put in time to try to get these lists as close as possible to real reality projects, ones that really needed to be done, and estimates that were as close as possible to what was really needed. And of course, we recognize there are moving parts here. And for example, as you described the hospital, that's exactly what we thought about the amounts being set aside for the hospital as well. That, the more information we get, we will have to adjust. And so I am very happy for the people of Guam. I am looking forward to them, their quality of life being improved and bettered by this. And, we're not proud that our poverty rates are high, but we definitely have an opportunity here to really make progress in those areas, our education and so many fields, our healthcare, and really just to take care of people. And so that's why I am very excited, and I'm looking forward to the work going forward. And again, thank you, Congressman, for your work. I'm very grateful for the Medicaid, reimbursement that we are getting. I'm grateful for the EITC reimbursement. Many, many years and many, many people have fought for that. So it's just what a blessing to be living through these times that we are seeing the fruits of all the efforts coming together and really, really getting to the people. I mean, those are for the people of Guam. And so I'm hoping we're going to see huge shifts in our population in the next census, right? That we can do our jobs right, that we're going to see, families out of poverty, with houses and with good jobs. And so that's what I'm also looking very forward to, is this education money that we're going to be able to, retrain and cross-train and really put them where we need them as well. So it's going to help all of us. So again, thank you again for all your efforts, and thank you for this opportunity to collaborate and for the details that you've provided today.
Thank you too, Madam Speaker, and Sijus Masi for your leadership. I was initially disappointed when I first thought that the legislature was not going to be making recommendations. And then I was incredibly, incredibly happy to see not only recommendations, but an exhaustive list come out from Melissa Latura under your leadership. I really believe that the legislature is where the power of the purse lies for our community. And while these federal resources may provide for a different way of money to get into our island, I think that the input from our legislature, the guidance from our legislature, and the leadership from our legislature, your leadership, Madam Speaker, is mission critical, because we need to make sure that local funds and federal funds are being fully aligned to realize the priorities of the people of Guam. And that's the responsibility of the legislature. And this listing that you've put together, as elaborate as it is, and of course your colleagues, the committees, the work that everybody did is good work. And I wanted to recognize you and the legislature for definitely going the extra mile to be very specific and to try and target multiple areas throughout our community. I'm looking forward to supporting, making sure that these federal resources are going to be able to be applied however we can to what you have itemized here, as well as to what it is that the legislature might be able to bring forward now that the essential worker question has been clarified. But you have my full support, Madam Speaker. The legislature, again, is where the power of the purse lies. And whether that dollar is a federal dollar or a local dollar, I believe that a legislatura has to have a very active role in making sure it goes to where the priorities are. And you've absolutely done your part with your leadership to set us on that course. So Sijulis Maasi, Madam Speaker. To our media partners, again, thank you so much for making time to join us here today. Thank you so much for making your social media platforms available and for allowing your listening audience to be able to engage with your very insightful questions that has helped to bring clarity to a lot of the items that we shared here today. We look forward to continuing to work with you as well. And with that, thank you all very much, and God bless Guam. Si Diyos maasi.